My name is Corey, and at 35 years old, I never expected to hand my parents a 13-year-old demo CD instead of a check. When I was 18, they gave my entire $87,000 college fund to my stepbrother Travis for his music career. I worked through crushing debt to become a doctor anyway. Last month, they showed up at my door needing $75,000 for medical bills. The look on their faces when I calmly handed them his dusty demo was priceless. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below, and subscribe if you want more stories about standing up for yourself. My early childhood was pretty normal. I grew up in a modest home in Pennsylvania, with my mom Diana and my biological father Thomas. Dad was a high school chemistry teacher who spent weekends taking me fishing or helping with science experiments in our garage. He was the one who first sparked my interest in medicine when I was around 5 years old. He would bring home medical journals and explain the diagrams to me in simple terms. I remember sitting on his lap as he showed me illustrations of the human heart and explained how it pumped blood throughout the body. When I was 9, our world shattered. Dad was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer despite never having smoked a day in his life. The disease progressed rapidly, and within 6 months he was gone. Those final days in the hospital made a lasting impression on me. I watched the doctors work tirelessly to make him comfortable, and even at that young age, I knew I wanted to help people the same way someday. Before he passed, Dad made sure we would be okay financially. He had a life insurance policy worth $87,000, which my mother promised would be set aside for my college education. I remember her holding my hand at the funeral and whispering, "Your father wanted to make sure you could become a doctor someday. This money is your future." For the next 3 years, it was just Mom and me. She worked as an administrative assistant at a local insurance company, and we got by all right. I threw myself into academics partly to make my dad proud, and partly to cope with his absence. By 6th grade, I was winning science competitions and volunteering at the local hospital on weekends, following nurses around and helping stock supply rooms. The hospital staff called me Little Dr. Corey, and I loved every minute of it. Everything changed when I was 12. Mom met Richard at a company function, and they hit it off immediately. He was a business consultant with a confident personality and expensive taste. Within 6 months, they were married. And suddenly I had a stepfather and a 17-year-old stepbrother named Travis. At first things seemed okay. Travis was friendly enough teaching me to play video games and occasionally letting me hang out with him and his friends. Richard was polite but distant, often working late or traveling for business. But slowly the dynamics in our home began to shift. Richard moved us to a larger house in an upscale neighborhood across town, which meant I had to change schools and leave all my friends behind. I went from being a popular kid with established friendships to the new boy who ate lunch alone. The academic standards at my new school were lower than what I was used to, so while my grades remained excellent, they didn't stand out as much. Meanwhile, Travis was treated like royalty in our new blended family. For his 18th birthday, Richard bought him a brand new Mustang despite the fact that Travis had already crashed his previous car. When Travis mentioned an interest in music suddenly, our garage was converted into a sound studio filled with thousands of dollars worth of equipment that mostly collected dust. What bothered me most was how my mother changed. She had always been my biggest supporter, attending every science fair and beaming with pride at my accomplishments. Now, she seemed more concerned with pleasing Richard and Travis. When I brought home straight, as she would smile briefly before turning her attention back to Travis playing simple chords on his guitar. "Listen to that, Corey," she would say. "Your brother is so talented." The first Thanksgiving after they married, Mom prepared all of Travis's favorite foods, but forgot the cranberry sauce I always requested. When I quietly mentioned it, Richard said, "In this house, we appreciate what we are given and don't make demands." I noticed Travis smirking behind his napkin. For Christmas that year, Travis received an expensive electric guitar and amp, while I got a generic science kit, clearly purchased from a bargain bin. Travis needs professional equipment for his future career, Richard explained, when he noticed my expression. Besides, you already have your college fund set aside. We need to invest in Travis's talents now. By the time I was 16, I had accepted my place in the family hierarchy. I kept my head down, focused on my studies, and counted the days until I could leave for college. My room became my sanctuary, filled with medical textbooks borrowed from the library. I continued volunteering at the hospital, extending my hours since I preferred being there than at home. Travis had graduated high school with barely passing grades and was taking a gap year that seemed permanent. He played in a garage band with friends, occasionally booking gigs at local bars where they would cover popular songs to disinterested patrons. Richard and my mother attended every performance, cheering as though they were at a Madison Square Garden concert. I remember one particular evening when I won a prestigious regional science competition with a project on innovative cancer treatment delivery methods. I called home excited to share the news, only to reach voicemail. Later, I discovered they had all gone to watch Travis's band play at a neighborhood block party. When I showed my mother the gold medal the next morning, she said, "That's nice, honey," before launching into a detailed description of how Travis had brought the house down with his rendition of a popular rock song. It hurt, but I channeled that pain into determination. If I couldn't count on their emotional support, I would succeed anyway. I applied for every scholarship I could find, studied for the SATs until my eyes burned, and volunteered extra hours at the hospital to strengthen my college applications. All the while, I took comfort in knowing that at least the financial aspect of my education was secure, thanks to my father's foresight and love. Little did I know that even that security was about to be yanked away from me in the cruelest way possible. Senior year was my time to shine. After years of perfect grades, hundreds of volunteer hours and leadership positions in both the science club and student council, I was named valedictorian. The same week, I received my acceptance letter from Princeton University, along with a partial scholarship that would cover about 20% of the tuition. It wasn't a full ride, but combined with my college fund, it meant I could attend one of the best pre-med programs in the country without financial stress. I remember running home with the acceptance packet, bursting through the front door to share the news. For once, everyone was home. Travis was lounging on the couch playing video games while Mom and Richard sat at the dining table reviewing some papers. "I got in," I announced, waving the envelope. "Princeton wants me for their pre-med program." Mom looked up with a genuine smile, the kind I hadn't seen directed at me in years. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful news." Even Richard nodded approvingly. "Good school. Very prestigious." Travis barely glanced away from his game. "Cool, bro." I sat down at the table, pulling out the acceptance letter and the financial breakdown. "They're offering a scholarship too, but I'll still need to access the college fund for the rest. They need a deposit by next month to secure my spot." The temperature in the room seemed to drop instantly. My mother and Richard exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. Travis suddenly paused his game and turned around, watching us with an odd expression. "About that," Richard began, clearing his throat. "We need to have a family discussion." My stomach tightened. Something in his tone set off alarm bells in my head. "What about it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My mother reached over and placed her hand on mine. "Sweetie, something has come up. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that we needed to act on quickly." Richard nodded. "Travis has been offered a record deal in Los Angeles. A very exclusive arrangement with a boutique label that specializes in discovering unique talent." I looked over at Travis, who now wore a smug smile. "You signed a record deal. When did this happen?" "Last month," he replied, stretching lazily. "They heard our demo and said I had something special. They want me in LA next week to start recording." Something still wasn't connecting. That's great for Travis. But what does this have to do with my college fund? The silence that followed was deafening. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. Richard straightened some invisible wrinkle in the tablecloth. "Mom, I prompted, my voice cracking slightly. "We had to invest in his future, Corey," she finally said. "The record label required an investment to produce his first album. It's standard in the industry." My brain refused to process what I was hearing. An investment from where? Richard took over, his business voice firmly in place. "We provided the necessary funds to secure Travis's contract. $87,000. It's a guaranteed return on investment once his album goes platinum." The room started spinning. 87,000. You gave them my college fund. All of it. "It's not like that," my mother said quickly. "We're investing it. Travis will pay it back as soon as he starts making money. Probably within a year." Pay it back. I echoed, still struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what they had done. "I need it now. Princeton is waiting for my deposit." "You can take out student loans like most kids," Richard said dismissively. "Travis has a limited window for his music career. You can become a doctor any time." I looked at Travis, who didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. Instead, he grinned and said, "Thanks for believing in me, bro. I'll mention you in my Grammy speech." Something inside me snapped. That money was from my father. He left it specifically for my education. "And we're your parents now," Richard countered, his voice hardening. "We decided this was the best use of those funds for our family." Our family. I stood up so quickly, my chair fell backward. That money was the last thing my dad could give me. He wanted me to become a doctor. My mother began to cry, but I noticed her tears seemed more about her discomfort than my distress. "Corey, please try to understand. This is a guaranteed success. The producer said, Travis has the most natural talent he's heard in 20 years. "And what about my talent?" I demanded. "What about my acceptance to Princeton? What about everything I've worked for?" Richard stood as well, towering over me. "That's enough. What's done is done. The money has been transferred, and Travis is leaving for Los Angeles next week. You should be supporting your brother instead of making this all about yourself." "Stepbrother," I corrected coldly. "And that money was never yours to give." "Watch your tone," Richard warned. "You live under my roof. You show respect." My mother reached for my hand again. "Honey, we know this is disappointing, but think of the big picture. When Travis makes it big, he can help pay for your medical school too." I pulled my hand away. "You really believe that? Look at him, Mom. He can barely remember to take out the trash. You think he's going to send me checks for tuition?" Travis flipped me off from the couch. "Not with that attitude, I won't." "Travis," my mother scolded weakly before turning back to me. "I know you're upset, but this decision is final. We expect you to be supportive." I looked at the three of them and suddenly saw with perfect clarity what I should have realized years ago. I was an outsider in this family. My needs, my dreams, my future had never mattered to Richard, and somewhere along the way they had stopped mattering to my mother too. Without another word, I turned and walked to my room, ignoring my mother calling my name. I closed the door quietly, sat on my bed, and for the first time since my father's funeral, I broke down completely. Great heaving sobs racked my body as I mourned not just the loss of my college fund, but the loss of the mother I thought I had. Through the walls, I could hear them celebrating downstairs. Travis laughing, Richard discussing flight arrangements, my mother excitedly talking about visiting Los Angeles. They had already moved on my devastation, forgotten like yesterday's news. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat at my computer, researching student loans, work-study programs, and additional scholarships. The numbers were daunting. Even with my partial scholarship, I was looking at over $200,000 in debt by the time I finished medical school. But as I stared at my father's picture on my desk, I made a promise to him and to myself. I would become a doctor, with or without their support. The next day, I called my biology teacher, Mrs. Reynolds, who had always been a mentor to me. Through tears, I explained the situation. Without hesitation, she and her husband offered me their guest room until I left for college. 2 days later, while my family was out shopping for Travis's trip, I packed my essential belongings and moved out. I left a note simply stating where I had gone and that I would be in touch when I was ready. I didn't hear from my mother for 3 days. College hit me like a freight train. Not academically, I was prepared for that, but financially and emotionally. While my classmates worried about which parties to attend, I was calculating how many hours I needed to work to afford textbooks. I secured 3 part-time jobs, morning shifts at the campus cafeteria, weekend work as a lab assistant for a chemistry professor, and overnight security at the university library. Between classes, studying, and working, I averaged about 4 to 5 hours of sleep each night. My housing situation was equally stressful. The dorms were too expensive, so I found an off-campus apartment shared with 3 other students. My room was barely larger than a closet, with just enough space for a twin mattress on the floor and a small desk I had rescued from someone's curb. In winter, the drafty windows let in so much cold air that I could see my breath in the morning. I couldn't afford to run the heat above 60 degrees, so I studied in the library until closing time each night. The first semester, I had to sell my laptop to pay for textbooks, relying instead on library computers. When those were occupied, I would handwrite my assignments and type them up whenever a terminal became available. My watch, a high school graduation gift from my grandmother, went to a pawn shop to cover an unexpected car repair for the ancient Honda Civic I had purchased with my savings. While other students ordered pizza and went to movies, I survived on ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and free coffee from the cafeteria. I learned that hunger is a special kind of distraction, a constant gnawing companion that makes it difficult to focus on cellular biology or organic chemistry. My mother called occasionally, but our conversations were strained. She always began by asking how I was doing, but quickly shifted to updates about Travis's flourishing career in Los Angeles. Apparently, he was networking with industry professionals and fine-tuning his sound. When I asked pointed questions about his album or any actual progress, the answers were vague. I stopped taking her calls after a while. The academic challenges were just as intense as the financial ones. Despite my high school success, college coursework was on another level entirely. My organic chemistry professor, Dr. Harriman, was notorious for failing half his class. During one particularly brutal exam, I nearly passed out from exhaustion, having come directly from an 8-hour security shift without sleep. I scored a 68% on that test, the lowest grade I had ever received. After class, Dr. Harriman asked me to stay behind. "Mr. Wallace," he said, peering over his glasses, "your work has been exceptional until now. What happened?" I considered making an excuse, but opted for honesty. I worked overnight and didn't have time to sleep before the exam. He frowned. "That's not sustainable." "Neither is dropping out because I can't afford tuition," I replied. Instead of the lecture I expected, Dr. Harriman surprised me. "Come to my office tomorrow. I may have a better position for you than night security." The next day, he offered me a research assistant position in his lab that paid twice my security job wage for fewer hours. It still wasn't enough to live comfortably, but it meant I could sleep at least 6 hours most nights. Not everything was miserable. During my sophomore year, I met James in my anatomy class. Like me, he was working multiple jobs to stay afloat. We bonded over shared struggles and began studying together. James had an uncanny ability to make even the driest material entertaining, creating ridiculous mnemonics that somehow worked perfectly. My landlady, Mrs. Patel, sometimes accidentally made too much dinner and would bring me leftovers. After learning I was a pre-med student, she began asking my advice about her medications, treating me with a respect I hadn't experienced since leaving home. Professor Aldridge, my biology mentor, noticed my worn textbooks and quietly connected me with a program that provided educational materials to students in need. He never mentioned it directly, allowing me to maintain my dignity while receiving crucial help. During junior year, I met Sarah in the campus cafeteria where I still worked morning shifts. She was a literature major who came in daily for coffee. After weeks of casual conversation, she asked me out. Our first date was a free concert in the park, followed by a walk around campus. Sarah came from a wealthy family but never made me feel self-conscious about my circumstances. When she learned about my financial situation, she didn't offer money, which would have hurt my pride, but instead found ways to spend time together that didn't cost anything. "Money is just money," she said once when I apologized for not being able to take her to an expensive restaurant. "I'd rather have honest company than fancy meals with someone shallow." By senior year, I had developed a routine that, while grueling, was at least manageable. I maintained a 3.85 GPA, despite my work schedule, and my medical school applications were strong. The student loans had accumulated to a terrifying sum, but I refused to think too much about it, one mountain at a time. Christmas of senior year was particularly difficult. The campus was deserted, and James had gone home to his family. Sarah had invited me to join her family in Vermont, but I couldn't afford to miss the extra holiday shifts at a local hospital where I had started working as an orderly. I spent Christmas Day alone in my apartment, eating a microwave dinner and studying for MCAT exams. That evening, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," she said, sounding genuinely happy. "We miss you." In the background, I could hear laughter and music, the sounds of a family celebration. "Merry Christmas," I replied, trying to keep the loneliness from my voice. "I have great news," she continued excitedly. "Travis is coming home for a few weeks. His producer is finalizing some contract details, so he has some downtime. We're having a welcome home party tomorrow. You should come." 4 years had passed, and she still didn't get it. "Mom, I have to work tomorrow." On December 26th, "Surely you can take one day off to see your brother." "Stepbrother," I corrected automatically. "And no, I can't. Some of us actually have to work for a living." She sighed. "Corey, when are you going to let this go? Travis is doing wonderfully in Los Angeles. The album is coming along beautifully. In fact, they're talking about a small tour next summer." "That's great," I said flatly. "Has he paid back my college fund yet? You said it would only take a year." The line went quiet. Then in a smaller voice, she said, "These things take time, Corey. The music industry is complicated. So that's a no." "You've become so bitter," she said. "This isn't like you." "You wouldn't know what I'm like anymore, Mom. You chose your new family a long time ago." She started to protest, but I cut her off. "I have to go. Merry Christmas." I hung up and returned to my textbooks, pushing down the hurt and focusing on the future I was building for myself by myself. Medical school was even more challenging than undergrad. I was accepted to a state program in Michigan, not as prestigious as I had once dreamed of, but solid and more affordable than other options. Still, even with scholarships and aid, my loans ballooned to over $275,000 by the second year. The workload was crushing. While undergrad had been difficult, medical school was like drinking from a fire hose every single day. The volume of information we had to absorb was staggering, and the stakes felt immeasurably higher. Every fact I memorized, every procedure I practiced, could someday be the difference between life and death for a patient. I continued working part-time, though my program strongly discouraged it. Most of my classmates were either from wealthy families or had resigned themselves to astronomical debt. I tried to find a middle ground, working just enough to afford necessities while taking out loans for tuition. My apartment was even smaller than my college place, a studio with barely enough room for a bed and desk. The neighborhood was rough, with frequent police sirens providing a nighttime soundtrack. But the rent was cheap, and the elderly couple next door brought me homemade soup every Sunday after learning I was studying to be a doctor. The stress took a toll on my health. I developed insomnia, often lying awake despite bone-deep exhaustion. I lost 15 pounds. My first semester, my clothes hanging loose on my already lean frame. I caught every cold that circulated campus, my immune system weakened by stress and poor nutrition. One evening during finals week of my first year, I collapsed in the medical library. I woke up in the university hospital with an IV in my arm. Severe dehydration and exhaustion, the attending physician told me. When was the last time you had a proper meal or 8 hours of sleep? I couldn't remember. The doctor, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, but a stern expression, sat on the edge of my bed. Listen to me. You won't help anyone if you kill yourself before graduation. Medicine is a marathon, not a sprint. That wake-up call forced me to reevaluate. I couldn't work any less, but I could be smarter about my health. I created a meal prep system, cooking large batches of healthy food on Sundays. I established a strict sleep schedule, prioritizing at least 6 hours no matter what. I found a free meditation app and dedicated 10 minutes each morning to mental health. Small changes added up. By second year, I had found my rhythm. I discovered a talent for emergency medicine during my rotations, thriving under the pressure of quick decisions and immediate interventions. The controlled chaos of the emergency department felt natural to me, like a space where my ability to function under extreme stress was finally an asset rather than a liability. My supervising physician, Dr. Ramirez, took notice. "You have good instincts, Wallace," he said after I correctly diagnosed a pulmonary embolism in a patient with atypical symptoms. "And you don't panic. That's rare in a student." His encouragement meant more than he knew. For years, I had pushed forward with no validation, no reassurance that my sacrifices were worth it. His simple acknowledgement that I was good at this, that I belonged in medicine, sustained me through countless difficult shifts. During my third year, I had my first truly life-changing experience as a physician in training. A 16-year-old boy was brought in following a car accident, his vital signs unstable and dropping. The attending physician was tied up with another critical patient, leaving me and a resident to stabilize him. When the boy's blood pressure suddenly plummeted, indicating internal bleeding, I assisted in performing an emergency procedure that ultimately saved his life. Hours later, after he was stabilized and moved to the ICU, his parents found me in the hallway. The father, a tall man with red-rimmed eyes, embraced me without warning. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice raw with emotion. "Thank you for saving our son." In that moment, every all-nighter, every missed social event, every penny of debt seemed worth it. This was why I had fought so hard. This feeling couldn't be bought, not with $87,000 or any amount of money. Financially, my situation improved slightly during residency. The pay was minimal compared to the hours worked, but it was steady income. I created a detailed spreadsheet tracking every penny I spent and every dollar of debt, calculating exactly how long it would take to become financially stable once I began practicing. The numbers were sobering. Even with a doctor's salary, I was looking at 15 to 20 years of aggressive payments to clear my student loans. But I developed a plan: live like a resident for 5 years, after residency pouring the majority of my income into debt reduction. No luxury apartment, no expensive car, no lavish vacations, until I was free from the shadow of debt. Sarah and I had broken up during my first year of medical school. The distance and my brutal schedule made maintaining a relationship nearly impossible. We parted on good terms, and I sometimes saw updates about her life on social media. She was married now, teaching English at a private school in Massachusetts. I was happy for her, though the updates were a reminder of the personal life I had put on hold. Dating during residency was equally challenging. I went on occasional dates, but most women understandably lost interest when they realized I could only offer them a few exhausted hours of my time each week. Those who were initially attracted to the idea of dating a doctor quickly discovered that the reality, especially during training, was far less glamorous than television shows suggested. Through it all, I had almost no contact with my family. My mother's calls became less frequent and eventually stopped altogether. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard that Travis had returned from Los Angeles after 2 years, his music career apparently stalled. I felt no satisfaction at this news, only a dull ache for what might have been if my parents had supported my dreams with the same enthusiasm they had shown for his. By the time I completed my residency and accepted a position at a respected hospital in Chicago, I was 33 years old. I had spent 15 years in relentless pursuit of my goal, working harder than I thought possible, and sacrificing nearly everything along the way. My first act as an attending physician was to purchase a modest 2-bedroom condo in a safe neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, the first real home I had owned. The second bedroom became an office, where I kept meticulous track of my finances, as I implemented my debt repayment plan. Within 18 months, I had paid off $100,000 of my student loans. Each payment felt like removing a small weight from my shoulders. I projected that, at my current rate, I would be debt-free by 40, assuming no major financial setbacks. I developed a reputation at the hospital as a skilled emergency physician with an excellent bedside manner. Nurses requested to work with me and residents sought me out for mentorship. The scared, exhausted student had become a confident doctor, respected by colleagues, and appreciated by patients. The journey from betrayed 18-year-old to successful physician had transformed me in ways I never anticipated. The bitterness I initially carried had gradually given way to determination, then to a quiet pride in what I had accomplished on my own terms. I still thought about the college fund sometimes, but more as a turning point in my life than an open wound. Or so I believed, until my parents suddenly reappeared, bringing all those buried feelings rushing back to the surface. While I was struggling through medical school, Travis's guaranteed success in the music industry turned out to be anything but. I pieced together what happened through occasional updates from my Aunt Lisa, who had always been kind to me and stayed in loose touch over the years. The record deal that had justified stealing my college fund wasn't with a major label, as my parents had implied, but rather a small independent outfit called Sunset Sound Records. From what Aunt Lisa gathered, they primarily signed artists for minimal advances while retaining major percentages of any potential earnings. Travis's investment of $87,000 had essentially purchased studio time and minimal promotion for a demo CD containing 5 tracks. That demo, pretentiously titled Soul Revolution, received exactly 1 play on a local Los Angeles radio station during their midnight New Artist Spotlight segment. The DJ's only comment afterward was, "Well, that was certainly something. Not exactly a ringing endorsement." Travis spent his first year in Los Angeles, living in a rundown apartment, shared with 3 other aspiring musicians. According to Aunt Lisa, he quickly developed a pattern that would define his career: initial enthusiasm for a project, followed by frustration when instant success didn't materialize, culminating in placing blame on everyone but himself. When his demo failed to generate interest, he blamed the producer for not understanding his vision. When local venues declined to book his performances, it was because the LA music scene is all about connections, not talent. When band members quit after Travis missed rehearsals, they were not committed enough to the artistic process. After 18 months in Los Angeles, Sunset Sound dropped Travis from their label, citing creative differences and market realities. In truth, they had realized he lacked both the talent and work ethic to succeed. Travis returned home to live with my parents, bringing nothing but excuses and a box of unsold demo CDs. Rather than acknowledge the failure, my parents doubled down on their support. Richard helped Travis set up another home studio, this time converting the basement of their house. They paid for expensive audio equipment, promotional materials, and even hired a music consultant who took several $1,000s to tell Travis his sound needed refining. For the next several years, Travis bounced between various music projects, each promising to be his big break. There was the electronic music phase, where he called himself DJ Travmatic and played occasional sets at college parties. Then came his folk rock period, complete with an affected accent and lyrics about struggles he had never experienced. Each reinvention required more money for equipment, wardrobe, and promotion. According to Aunt Lisa, Travis had also developed a concerning relationship with alcohol and recreational drugs, common in his social circle. What started as party habits evolved into dependencies that further eroded his already questionable work ethic. My parents either didn't notice or chose to ignore these issues, continuing to fund his lifestyle and make excuses for his failures. The financial toll on my parents became increasingly evident. Richard's consulting business struggled during the recession, with many clients cutting back on external advisors. They refinanced their house twice to keep up with expenses, a significant portion of which went to Travis's various ventures. They had to downgrade from 2 luxury cars to more modest vehicles, though they maintained appearances in other ways. When Travis turned 30, he announced his newest endeavor, opening his own recording studio to produce other artists. This required the most substantial investment yet, as he needed space, professional equipment, and marketing to attract clients. My parents, still clinging to the dream of his success, liquidated a significant portion of their retirement accounts to provide the capital. Greenfield Sound Studio operated for exactly 7 months before closing due to lack of clients. The few artists who recorded there complained about Travis's lack of professionalism and limited technical skills. One particularly damaging review online described the experience as paying premium prices for amateur hour. All these details reached me secondhand as I maintained my distance from the family. Occasionally, I would see updates on social media. Travis's profiles were filled with professional-looking photos and grandiose announcements about upcoming projects that rarely materialized. My mother's posts alternated between proud updates about Travis's flourishing career and vague requests for prayers during challenging times. I didn't take pleasure in Travis's failures. If anything, I felt a complex mixture of vindication and sadness. Vindication that my assessment of his prospects had been accurate, and sadness for my parents who had sacrificed so much, including their relationship with me, for nothing. Around the time I was completing my residency, Travis launched a crowdfunding campaign to finance his next album. The promotional video featured him sitting in what appeared to be an expensive studio, likely rented for the shoot, earnestly explaining that he just needed one more chance to share his gift with the world. The campaign sought $50,000 but raised less than $2,000, mostly from family, friends, and relatives. The local newspaper in my hometown ran a small article about Richard's business closing permanently due to financial difficulties. The piece mentioned that he had suffered health problems in recent years, including heart issues that required ongoing medical care. Reading between the lines, it was clear that my parents were in serious financial trouble. Aunt Lisa confirmed as much during one of our infrequent phone calls. "They've burned through almost everything, Corey," she told me. "The house is underwater on the mortgage. Richard's medical bills are piling up, and Travis still hasn't found steady work. Your mom had to take a retail job at the mall to make ends meet." I absorbed this information with complicated emotions. Part of me felt they were facing the natural consequences of their choices. Another part remembered the mother who had once lovingly supported my dreams before Richard and Travis entered our lives. "Are they asking about me?" I inquired, not sure what answer I hoped for. Aunt Lisa hesitated. "They know I keep in touch with you. Your mom asks how you're doing. I've told her you're a doctor now working in Chicago." "And?" "She seemed proud, Corey, and sad. I think she regrets how things turned out." I changed the subject, not ready to process those feelings. But I suspected that sooner or later our paths would cross again. The only question was whether I would be ready when that happened. The call came on a Tuesday evening in October, 13 years after they had given away my college fund. I was reviewing patient charts in my home office when my phone displayed a number I hadn't seen in years, my mother's cell. I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. Curiosity won out. "Hello? Corey, is that you?" My mother's voice sounded older, strained. "Yes, it's me. Thank God you answered." She paused, and I could hear her taking a shaky breath. "How are you, sweetie? It's been so long." "I'm fine," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "Is everything okay? You sound upset." She gave a small, humorless laugh. "Not really. Things have been difficult. I was wondering if we could talk. In person, I mean. It's important." "I'm in Chicago," I said, though she probably knew this from Aunt Lisa. "That's a long way to come for a conversation." "We'd come to you," she replied quickly. "Richard and I. We're actually planning to be in Chicago next week for a medical consultation." The pieces began falling into place. What kind of medical consultation? Richard has been having heart problems, she explained, her voice dropping. He needs a procedure, and there's a specialist at Northwestern who might be able to help. Northwestern was the hospital system where I worked. This wasn't a coincidence. I see. I kept my voice even. And you want to meet while you're here. Please, Corey. It's been 13 years. Can't we at least talk? Against my better judgment, I agreed. Fine. Next Thursday evening at my place. Text me when you know your schedule, and I'll send the address. After hanging up, I sat motionless for several minutes, emotions warring within me. Anger at their sudden reappearance when they needed something. Curiosity about what exactly they wanted. And beneath it all, a small, unwelcome flicker of hope that perhaps my mother had genuinely missed me. I spent the week anxious and distracted. Colleagues noticed my preoccupation, but I deflected their concerns. How could I explain that my estranged parents were suddenly coming back into my life, almost certainly because they wanted something? Thursday arrived, and with it a text confirming they would come at 7. I left work early, to prepare not physically, but emotionally. I reviewed old journal entries from my college and medical school days, reminding myself of exactly what their actions had cost me. Not just financially, but in terms of security, family support, and peace of mind during my most challenging years. At precisely 7, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find two people who looked simultaneously familiar and like strangers. My mother had aged significantly, her once dark hair now mostly gray, deep lines etched around her eyes and mouth. Richard appeared even older, his face gaunt and his posture stooped. They were both dressed well, but I noticed the subtle signs of financial strain. Richard's shoes were expensive, but worn my mother's purse, a high quality but older style. Corey, my mother breathed, stepping forward to embrace me. I accepted the hug stiffly. Richard extended his hand, which I shook briefly. "Come in," I said, leading them into my living room. It wasn't lavishly furnished in keeping with my debt repayment plan, but it was clean, comfortable, and clearly the home of a successful professional. "Your place is lovely," my mother commented, glancing around. "Very you. Always so neat and organized." "Thank you. Can I get you anything to drink, water, coffee?" They both declined, settling awkwardly on my couch. I took the chair opposite, maintaining a physical distance that mirrored the emotional one. "You look well," Richard offered. "Very professional." "Thank you. I heard you've been having heart problems." He nodded grimly. "Aortic valve stenosis. Been getting worse over the past few years." I'm sorry to hear that, I said, and meant it. Despite everything, I didn't wish ill health on anyone. An uncomfortable silence fell. My mother broke it by launching into a stream of small talk, asking about Chicago, commenting on the weather, wondering if I enjoyed my work. I answered politely, but briefly, waiting for them to get to the real purpose of their visit. Finally, after about 20 minutes of stilted conversation, my mother reached for Richard's hand. "Corey, we've missed you so much. These years without you have been difficult." "Have they?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Of course they have," she insisted. "You're my son. Not a day has gone by that I haven't thought about you." "That's interesting," I said carefully, "because there were many days, weeks, and eventually years when I didn't hear from you at all." Richard cleared his throat. "We both made mistakes, Corey. We're here to try to move forward as a family." "Are we? Because it seems like you're here because Richard needs medical help." My mother's expression fell. "That's not fair. Yes, we're here partly because of Richard's health, but we've wanted to reconnect for a long time." 13 years is a long time to want something without taking action, I observed. Richard shifted uncomfortably. "Look, Corey, I know you and I have had our differences." "Differences?" I interrupted. "Is that what we're calling it? You took my college fund, the last gift from my dying father, and gave it to Travis for a music career that went nowhere. That's a bit more than a difference." We thought we were making the right decision at the time, my mother pleaded. We really believed Travis was going to be successful. I looked at her directly. And what about my success? Did you believe in that too? The silence that followed told me everything. Richard finally spoke, his voice strained. We need to be honest about why we're here. I need heart valve replacement surgery. Our insurance denied the claim because we fell behind on payments. The procedure costs $75,000. And there it was. The real reason for their sudden desire to reconcile. I see, I said quietly. And you thought I might help with that. You're a doctor, my mother said, as if this explained everything. You must know people who could help, or maybe work out some kind of payment plan. And if not, Richard added, his business tone returning despite his frail appearance. You're doing well financially. Family helps family in times of need. I almost laughed at the irony. Family helps family. Where was that sentiment when I was working 3 jobs and living on ramen noodles to get through college? That was different, Richard insisted. You were young, resilient. You could handle the struggle. I'm 68 years old with a serious heart condition. And where is Travis during all this? I asked. Surely your son is stepping up to help. My mother looked down at her hands. Travis is going through a difficult period right now. He had to move back home last year after his apartment lease wasn't renewed. Let me guess, I said. His music career still hasn't taken off. He's been unlucky, Richard defended. The industry is very competitive. It's not about luck, I countered. It's about talent and hard work, neither of which Travis has demonstrated. That's unfair, my mother protested weakly. He's trying. Is he? Is he working multiple jobs to help pay for your medical bills? Is he selling his possessions, taking out loans? Or is he still living off you while pursuing his dreams at everyone else's expense? Neither of them answered, which told me everything I needed to know. What happened to my college fund? I asked directly. The $87,000 that was supposed to secure my education. Did Travis ever pay it back like you promised? Richard shifted uncomfortably. The music industry is complicated. There were unexpected expenses, additional recording costs. So that's a no, I concluded. You gave away my future, and you got nothing in return. We didn't come here to rehash the past. Richard said, an edge of desperation in his voice. We came because I need this surgery, and we have nowhere else to turn. We're asking for your help as family. I looked at them, these 2 people who had once been the center of my world, now sitting on my couch, asking for $75,000 after giving away my $87,000 without a second thought. I need a minute, I said, standing and walking to my office. In my office, I stood staring out the window at the Chicago skyline, thoughts racing. The practical part of me calculated that I could afford to help them, though it would set back my debt repayment plan by years. The emotional part remembered every sleepless night, every missed meal, every moment of stress that their decision had caused me. My eyes fell on a storage box on my bookshelf. I had kept it all these years, a reminder of where I had come from and what I had overcome. I took it down and returned to the living room. My parents looked up expectantly as I entered. Perhaps they thought I was bringing my checkbook or credit card. Instead, I placed the box on the coffee table between us and removed the lid. Inside was a CD case, dusty and slightly yellowed with age. I handed it to Richard. Soul Revolution by Travis Wallace, the demo that had been worth more than my future. What is this? Richard asked, though he clearly recognized it. Your investment, I replied calmly. The reason you're sitting in my living room right now asking for help. My mother began to cry softly. Corey, please. Richard could die without this surgery. I understand that, I said, and I did. But I need you both to understand something too. Investments have consequences. Choices have outcomes. You chose Travis over me 13 years ago. You invested in his future at the expense of mine. We were wrong, my mother admitted, tears streaming down her face. Is that what you want to hear? We made a terrible mistake and we've regretted it for years. Have you? I asked, genuinely. Or do you only regret it now, that you need my help? Richard's face hardened. So you're refusing to help? You'd let me die to prove a point. I shook my head. No. I took an oath to do no harm. I won't give you $75,000, but I will connect you with the hospital's financial aid program. I know people who can help reduce the cost significantly and set up a manageable payment plan. That's it. Richard looked incredulous. After everything we did for you growing up. The audacity of his statement left me momentarily speechless. Everything you did for me, you took the one financial security I had and gave it away. You prioritized Travis's music fantasy over my education. You left me to struggle alone for 13 years. I raised you, my mother interjected. I loved you. You did, I acknowledged. And then you chose a new family and left me behind. I stood up, signaling that the conversation was concluding. I'll email you the contact information for the hospital's financial assistance office tomorrow. They're good people. They'll help you navigate the system and find a solution that works for your situation. And that's all. My mother looked devastated. We came all this way after all these years, and that's all you can offer. It's more than you offered me, I said quietly. But yes, there is something else. I forgive you. They both looked startled. I forgive you not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger for 13 years has been exhausting. I'm letting it go. But forgiveness doesn't mean I'll enable the same patterns that hurt me in the first place. Richard stood shakily, his face a complex mixture of emotions. You've become hard, Corey. That's not how we raised you. No, I agreed. I became strong. That's how I raised myself, after you gave me no choice. My mother rose too, wiping her tears. Will we see you again? Can we try to rebuild our relationship? That depends, I replied honestly. If you're genuinely interested in knowing me as the person I've become, maybe. But if you're looking for financial support, or to ease your conscience, then no. They left shortly after, my mother hugging me tightly at the door, while Richard waited stiffly by the elevator. I promised to send the financial aid information, and they promised to be in touch after the surgery. The next morning, I contacted a colleague in cardiology who agreed to review Richard's case. I also arranged for the financial aid office to reach out to them directly. I didn't offer to pay, but I ensured they would receive the best care possible at a price they could manage. In the weeks that followed, I reflected deeply on what had transpired. The 18-year-old who had his future stolen would have wanted revenge, would have enjoyed watching them squirm. The 35-year-old doctor I had become wanted something different, peace. I realized that success is not just about achievements or money, but about maintaining your integrity through life's challenges. My parents and Travis had sacrificed their integrity for what they thought was an easy path to success. I had chosen the harder road and built something meaningful along the way. 3 months later, I received a letter from my mother. Richard's surgery had gone well, she wrote, and the financial aid program had reduced their costs considerably. Travis had finally taken a regular job at a local music store, teaching guitar lessons. She thanked me for my help and asked again if we could work on rebuilding our relationship. I wrote back with my terms: honest communication, respect for boundaries, and no financial expectations. I wasn't ready for regular contact, but I was open to small steps forward. Today, 2 years later, my relationship with my mother has cautiously improved. We talk monthly on the phone, and I visited once for a brief dinner. Richard and I maintain a polite distance. Travis and I have not spoken, which is probably for the best. Meanwhile, I've created my own definition of family through friends, colleagues, and, recently, a wonderful woman named Lauren who understands my past without being defined by it. I've also established a small foundation that provides emergency grants to medical students facing financial hardships, ensuring others don't have to work 3 jobs just to pursue their dreams. The college fund betrayal shaped me, but it doesn't define me. It taught me resilience, self-reliance, and the importance of keeping promises. Most importantly, it showed me that true success comes not from what is handed to you, but from what you build with your own two hands. What about you? Have you ever had to overcome someone else's betrayal to achieve your goals? How did it change you? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that their struggles can become their strength. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember that sometimes the greatest gift is being forced to discover just how capable you really are.